Year 22.
Yeah, but we won't get 22222. Like we had that opportunity a while ago, and now it's gone.
We did get 11, 11, 11.
We did. I wanted to do a whole event there, but then I ended up a day of oneness. That's what I was going to call it. But
Unity Day, I love it.
Yeah, a big day of oneness. But I, of course, got a gig instead. So I was like, well, no, not going to do that. That's the story of many of my things that haven't gotten done. Usually
the Dalai Lama walks into a sandwich shop and he says, "I will have one with everything."
It's a pizza, not a sandwich.
That one was deep.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're here in YouTube and you're trying to figure out why we're not responding to your chat, it's because you're not in Zoom. And if you're in Zoom and you don't understand why we're not doing your chat, it's because you're not in Mukana. You have to go from one to the other before we actually start listening to you. But I would highly recommend the trip. If you're watching and you see these panelists and you think that you might know more than we do, you might. And we would love to have you join our panel, add to our centuries of experience, and give your 2 cents into this process. It's a really great way to give back to the community and let us all learn together and grow faster together. So you just have to be here by 6:40. Now we open the doors at 6 o'clock, so if you want to come in and watch us test our mics, if you're trying to figure out, by the way, if your kit is ready to be on the panel, we are going to be slowly tightening over the next couple of weeks to a tighter kit. If you want to test that and figure that out, 6 to 6:30 Pacific Standard Time is a great time to do that. It's a lot of time when we're working on our tech and figuring things out together. 6:40 again, between 6:40 and 6:43 is when we do the mic checks. And if you're not here for the mic check, you don't need to raise your hand. We're not going to have you join this time, but we'd love to have you join tomorrow. So be here by 6:40 to join us with the mic checks. The first hour is dedicated to general questions 7 days a week. So there's from 7 to 8 every day. We do general questions, and that's just you really just asking whatever you need to know about virtual production, media production, and media in general. So those are the times to ask, and this is a great time to ask those questions. The entire show is driven by you, the viewers, the attendees. You actually run the whole show. We just kind of follow along at your cue. So asking the questions is important. If you're not asking the questions, voting on the questions is important. So it's really important to let us know how you want us to produce your show. So we just discussed this. We try to do the best we can to answer, but we won't get to the right answers for everything, but we will discuss it and we'll all learn in the process. Second hour is usually something vertical. So Monday is kind of a wild card. Tuesday is audio. Wednesday is video. Thursday tends to be artist related. Good news, by the way. I talked to Elmo's wife yesterday and they got their internet bumped up a little bit. So I think we're good to go for the performance on Thursday. And then Friday is generally event driven. Saturday is a focus on education. Today, we're very excited to have Ellen Fitton, who is an Emmy winning sound designer. And she has a lot of experience in live sound in the recording industry. Jeff Francis invited her to join us, and she'll be here for the second hour. So if you have questions for her, make sure to tag those questions as second hour so that Bill knows what to ask next. Anyway, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and hand it off. Bill, I think we've stacked up a couple questions.
Yeah, we have a couple of questions, and they're in good shape. So we're going to start with Thomas Danino, Spokane, Washington, in the U.S. When using Zoom webinar, does everyone experience an issue where when the presenter turns their camera off and on again, the viewer, when in full screen, does not get the video feedback on screen unless they leave and rejoin the meeting or take the system out of full screen? And there's a note whether the presenter is in screen share or pin the screen. It seems to work the same way.
I have not seen that behavior, but I'm usually the presenter. so there's a lot of turning off, and I'm trying to get, by the end of the year, I won't be turning. I used to not turn off my video, and because of the problem of resorting, it resorts to the bottom or it does something else, and so. My system got torn apart and took me a little while to get it back together because I had to make a bunch of SDI cables, but I should have that largely sorted out in the next week or two. And so I won't be doing it specifically because it creates that sorting error. That may be related to what you're talking about, but where it gets sorted out. But you're saying that they don't, when they turn off, Oh, and
Yeah.
you're in full screen. Can you explain the behavior?
Yeah. So I'm recording I'm doing screen caps through Hyperdeck.
Yep.
And on the, and I'm using, so second screen, I mean, I can actually show you, right?
Uh-huh.
I mean,
And are you using a room or a
there's
webinar?
it's a webinar, not a room. So the presenters
And why are you capturing? Why are you capturing in a room or in a webinar?
I'm capturing that way because the client set it up as a webinar as opposed to a room or regular meeting. And so they, it's very strange. It only happens, it may just be this one system that's doing it.
Are they showing slides?
Yeah. So she'll have a slideshow up, or she could go to full screen and then she'll be in full screen. And then she will turn off her camera while she's waiting for people to join the meeting, or while she takes a break or something. And then either she'll just come on full screen again, or it seems.
And
like
is she
it's
doing
not
this a lot?
tied. Oh yeah.
So there's a couple things that I would recommend, and then we'll jump. So number one is if she's doing it all the time, then I recommend her getting a real camera and a switcher, like an ATEM Mini, that she can just, or something that where she can, even a web presenter, you can switch off by just hitting a button. But but I would recommend her getting away from like just doing it in a physical event. You could also use OBS or Memo Live, but they'll add other complexities that she may not want to do. But a hardware thing where you just hit a button that says, you could just tell her, when you hit, it's on 1, and when you hit 2, you're off air. And so that might be an easy way for her to, if she's doing a lot of these. If you're doing 1 or 2 here or there, or one every month or something, it's probably not worth it. If you're doing it every day or every week or relatively often, I would highly recommend getting hardware to make it easier to do. And then especially if it's important. If the second thing is that I would highly recommend moving away from webinars if you're doing capture and moving it into rooms. The room will allow you to basically you can define in the web interface in a Zoom room, you can say, other is in this screen and always, and the presentation is in this screen always. And if she has enough bandwidth, you'll get a high resolution version, a 1080p version of both her slide and her. So you could capture both of them separately if you wanted to. And it's seamless for her. She just does what she does. But for you, you're getting 2 1080p signals that you can either recut live. You can just put on a little switcher on your end, just cut back and forth and create a show. You can have picture in picture, whatever you want to do. Or you can record both of them and do that in post, or both. And so as far as doing record productions, I would highly recommend that approach. We used it a lot and it works really well.
The really, really strange thing is that I will not get that video feed to pop up on my screen, but other people that are viewing it do get it. So it seems like it's a Zoom software
I will say that it's a quirky, turning screens on and off is in general not something that I recommend in high profile events. So we tell people over and over and over again, if you're in an event with us, never turn your camera off, ever. Yeah. And we try to get them to not turn their audio off either, because we're managing it on our end. And so we just tell them, don't ever do that. Like, don't ever turn that off, because it creates they create a series of behaviors inside of Zoom that are not great, And so we try to, and again, you can do it if she's actually doing a webinar. You can jump in as a room and grab some of this. It won't be the same quality as you'll get what we do is we have a point-to-point connection with that person in the room. Then we pipe them into the webinar the way we want to do it. That way you can now cut the show between stuff. And Chris Fenwick is showing kind of the layout of the of how you can control the layout of your room. But you can have the room join the webinar, and then you'll be able to grab it. But again, you generally won't have the same quality. These are all things. So what happens is you can define what's going to happen when share starts, what's going to happen when you're talking. And so and all of those things are definable. And so it's kind of the secret weapon to doing this stuff is using the Zoom room or apparatus. And again, that Zoom room can join the webinar in the same way that you see DVE Store right now. Guy has his joined. And because it's a Zoom room, it bumps the quality will be minimum 720. I don't know if you put it into a larger group, whether it'll be 1080. I think that you have to make some requests for that. and get through a gauntlet. We was kind of a it was a village effort to get this one to 1080. Anyway, so that's, I would recommend really researching rooms. It's what you want. Anytime you're doing any record in Zoom, rooms is the solution. And, it was great that a couple people here started figuring that out, and Guy went down the path and really got us sold on it. And then it's kind of spread through the community like wildfire. Is that we just know that Zoom rooms really change the way you do this work. Go ahead, Bill, and then Jeffrey.
Yeah, in some of the ad hoc small local groups that I belong to, we've had that issue, and it seems to me it's usually when an individual with the base Zoom account starts getting into a larger webinar, it seems like at some point we'll start seeing those PyCons show up instead of video feeds as they move around. So I think it may be bandwidth related, and the fact that those base accounts just don't have a lot of bandwidth and they get starved for it later. One
of the things that we do think is that the Zoom may be a little sensitive to the lowest common denominator connection to Zoom. I have a theory about that. It used to be a real problem in Hangouts. So Google Hangouts, what happens is there's every company calls it something different, but we'll just call it a reflector. There is a reflector that when all these things come in, and it reflects back mix minus to everyone, and it builds what we're seeing here, right? So whatever you call it, but let's just call it the Zoom reflector, is a system that's what's figuring it all out. When one connection is really slow, to Bill's point, or other things, or an older version or something like that, it puts a lot more pressure on the reflector because it's trying to keep it in sync, and it's trying to keep everything going. The fact that Zoom does what it does is kind of magical. And so, so I, because I got to do it from 2010. This has come a long way. And so, but the reflector used to crash, like the Hangout one. If the reflector lost its, if someone connected slow, it wasn't that they had a slow connection, you could end the event. And so we were very careful about that. So one of the things also is that Zoom has added the ability to create a minimum version that people can join. I'm pretty aggressive about that, which is usually about every week or two, I put it to the newest version. So I give the newest version a little bit of time, and then I turn it up, and that forces everybody who joins this webinar to update. Some of you probably have experienced that. And that's me keeping everybody in line. And and I believe that increases the stability of the system. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, another thing I find out is if the resolution of the video has changed by anybody on that end, that causes the person to shift everything around. Like, for instance, if I mute my video, change the video source, come back in, most of the times I'll move to a different square. So my question to you, Tom, is what camera is she using? Does it have an auto feature to it? And can that be turned off?
I haven't been able to get them to actually tell me what the camera is. She's on tribal land in Montana. And so we were tasked with just recording these and cleaning them up for presentation. It's a small business administration contract for Native Americans. And so I haven't had the kind of control that we would all prefer in making sure that everything is set up on their end. Yeah, and so there have been a lot of issues with getting the camera. She replaced the camera. I do think it is something where it is changing resolution, and my machine that is essentially the playback for it is just having an issue accepting the change in resolution from the video feed. I don't know.
I still think that you'll have a better experience with a Zoom room joining the webinar than you do with a regular Zoom account, because it has a lot more definition of what's coming out of what HDMI cable. Doesn't change. Like, it just goes, other is going here, gallery's going here, presentation's going here, and it doesn't the only thing you have to worry about on a live event is when someone turns off their camera, it shows your return, like whatever you're sending back to Zoom. We've been making requests for Zoom to not do that and just have the option of putting up an image. Like, so when they don't, it just gives them back an image rather than our return, because we want to send complex things back with notes and things like that, and we can't do that right now. Go ahead, Courtney, and then we'll move on.
Just a couple of shots of the dart you might check in the Zoom settings. Have her check. There's a couple of things in the general. It's enter full screen automatically when starting or joining a meeting. See if that's checked, and if it is, uncheck it. And stop my video and audio when my display is off or screensaver begins. Make sure she doesn't have a screensaver turned on. And
but it sounds like she's consciously turning it off, for privacy reasons.
Right, but this is where it will stop sending video if the display goes off.
But I'm guessing from what Tom said is that that's not the issue we have right now, is that she's turning it off. She's going, it's pre-show, it's during a break, it's whatever.
Right.
Which I do every time I walk away. so it makes sense. But
he says it comes back when she enters or starts a meeting. So enter full screen may be checked, and that may be what's undoing it. And the other thing is have her check her video drivers, because frequently things like this where the video stream gets lost and doesn't refresh or doesn't redraw on the screen or through the output is a video driver issue. So make sure video driver is the latest version.
Yeah, just to go back to the strangest thing is other people that are on the webinar, they're getting that video feed. It's my machine locally that is not reloading or restarting the video feed.
And are you on a PC or Mac?
Mac.
What year?
I think it's a 2015 MacBook Pro.
And what operating system?
Mojave.
And Tom, are you a panelist on that webinar? So
no. I always have them leave me as an attendee, not as a panelist.
So if you're a panelist, you'll be able to pull that down in 720 as well. I'm guessing she has a normal account, so you're getting 360. If you join as a panelist and a Zoom room comes in, you can get 720 out of that, and that'll be a much better recording. And you can get that bump up in resolution with a $68 Facebook portal if you don't want to jump through all the Zoom room hoops and have the $40 a month charge. So I could help you out if you want to reach out to me in the Discord, and I'll just grab one of my $68 Facebook portals to test for you if you just want me to join one for testing.
Okay.
Be glad to help you out.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, guy.
Thanks for the question. Next question.
Moving along, it's Larry Jacobson in Cheyenne, Wyoming for the next question. I get stereo in my iMac or laptop, but mono on an iPad Pro 12.9 inch. Is there a setting in the iPad Pro version of Zoom as a participant? Note, I'm talking about the Zoom app and wearing AirPods Pros during all sources.
I bet that it's looking at iOS and not giving you stereo.
Yeah, I agree.
I bet you there's not a setting for it, but it is something we should request. It does make sense to have a stereo version of it. We want to get much more aggressive now that we have 1080p and we're trying to work out stereo. We want to get much more aggressive about bringing artists on, to play. But that'll be, we're trying to solve those problems. So we should remember to, let's do a little research on that and see if it is the truth. One of the things that I think we're going to start doing as a group, or I'm going to encourage people to do as a group, is that we will think of features that we really want as a group and then distribute, like, hey, it'd be really great if everybody requested this feature this week from Zoom. So if one person asked, yeah, it's one thing. I bet you if 100 people ask something in a week, that it'll get bumped up. At least,
yes, until it gets labeled the Lindsay mob, and then that's it.
No. I've done this before. It works pretty well. Go ahead, Chris.
Another thing I'll say is that clear, calm, and explicit discussion in this forum where you talk about the merits of why something is needed or desirable or useful. These clips, that little discussion, I promise you, they get to Zoom. Yep. They get watched in meetings and discussed. And so having those conversations is, it's super powerful. It's like having a one-on-one or whatever, what do we have here? A 27-on-1 focus group with Zoom. And we get to do it every day if we want to.
Well, one thing that I am thinking about is whether one of the second hours. I mean, the Zoom second hour that we did, or the Zoom second hours that we've done in the past, have been some of the most watched that we do. And so I have thought about whether rather than having Zoom questions every day, whether like Monday should just become a Zoom day where we just talk about Zoom issues and we talk about Zoom things, because a lot of us are doing it, and it might be a good place for us to trade notes, on it. I mean, we can still do general questions on it, but we would kind of do shorter questions then, and then spend an hour a week really, and bring people in like Zoom OSC and bring other things, like bring other people in there doing other Zoom plugins and really talk about best practices. I think it might be I've been thinking about it for a little while, but if people think do people think that's a good idea to have a second hour? Some people are unsure. Okay.
I'll also say
We'll
I
play with
haven't seen 1080 in a few days.
Interesting. I seem to see it recently, but anyway, I haven't looked at it in a couple days. All right, next question.
Vincent Alvarez in Bellingham, Washington, is up with coworkers planning on getting a Apple in a PC office. What possible issues should we think of? We've gone through a list of used programs. Anything else?
Stuart?
You're going to have issues with NTFS versus HFS. And you'll also have issues with networking. The easy way to share stuff from a Mac is actually share a space on one of the drives and map it as a network drive on the PCs, rather than going through all the rigmarole of trying to share through groups or anything like that. Just go direct.
Jason and Peter?
You're going to undoubtedly have problems with LDAP in any sort of managed environment. Servers can get a little bit hinky. There's a way around it. If you go into users and you actually authenticate based on, on the login server itself in the PC's domain, that can help. The issue there, though, is that you'll end up with an NTP drift that I've yet to ever see anyone be able to fix in a Windows Server managed environment. So it's certainly doable, and it's not the hardest thing in the world, also not the easiest.
Good, Peter?
I know they said they went through all the applications, but as we found out the hard way at work, you need to go through the web applications you might have internally, because some of them, as it turned out, had ActiveX buried inside of them, and which caused the applications to fail miserably.
Go ahead, Greg, and then Chris.
Yeah, hi. Not that specifically technical, but I would just check with your IT department and see what their situation is, because, for instance, in my organization, they do not support Macs. I cannot get onto the the server. I can't get into the system with a Mac. So I would check that out.
I just can't get over the fact that Santa is in our like I just think of all it looks so good.
Yeah, seriously, you're about to get a Christmas list from all of us, and we've got
exactly.
great stuff.
Because
we started yesterday. I think Courtney was first in.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jeffrey, and then Schy.
The one thing that I used to have to deal with, because I had to deal with that in days before they could actually connect up the Macs to the Windows environment, was two sets of documentation, and because not everything works exactly the same way, and of course the control versus the command key, that's the big hurdle there.
Go ahead, Schy, and then Bill.
I'm used to working with the end user, so the attitude is if your end user is unfamiliar with the Mac versus the Windows operating system, just think upside down and backwards, and that way you'll be able to find what you're looking for. So if your concepts of where things are not in the bottom left, they're in the upper right. Upper left.
Bill and then Chris, and we'll move on.
I was just going to suggest the same thing. It's interface stuff that'll annoy you at first, and there must be 5 or 6 good videos on YouTube or somewhere else that explains for people migrating from PC into the Apple ecosystem how things work and where they are. If you can find the highest rated or the best one of those, I'd make sure that everybody watched it, because there's enough little things that are different, and the annoyance factor is going to make you mad.
Go ahead, Chris.
You'll also have to deal with a certain amount of shame and ridicule. People will tease you, but you'll also have people coming up saying, yeah, I used to have a Mac. I'm kind of a Mac guy.
I think the biggest problem you're going to have is the presentations are going to look a lot better. And if they learn how to use numbers, it'll look so much better than Excel. So anyway, I think there'll be a lot of peer pressure there. Anyway, next question.
Moving on to Vincent Alvarez of Bellingham, Washington. For people who insist on using a browser for Zoom, which browser, if any, do you prefer or don't like? I've been having issues with Chrome on a PC eating a lot of resources.
Just as a note, you're giving up a huge number of features when you go to the web. The web browser is absolutely a second-class citizen, maybe a third-class citizen, possibly not even allowed in the country. So it is it's kind of like, yeah, sure, we can give you a video. It is really a horrible experience, and you're getting much less out of Zoom when you use the browser. Go ahead, TJ.
We were not allowed to install the Zoom client back in beginning of the year. So Firefox is what I prefer to use. Lean and mean, and it works.
But you gave that up, right? They gave that up because
no, actually, we're a teams organization. So,
okay.
But yeah,
teams.
Next question.
Moving on, GL Wheeler of Ellicott City says, for Doug Ferguson specifically, does your company do indoor basketball or volleyball game? If so, what's your setup?
Is Doug
that would take an entire hour to really discuss.
But do you have behind the scenes photos?
Actually, I've created some videos, and I can do one. And I've actually thought about a way to create an event where I do a behind the scenes of the production itself, and just throw the link in Discord and let everybody see live production in its glory.
What would be fun is to have a that I've done in the past is you just stream the multi-view, and then you put comms in one channel and the program in the other channel, and you'll sometimes get more viewers watching that than watching the actual program, because it's just fascinating for people to watch. You said
I normally put a GoPro in the truck and I record behind the scenes, because I wear like 5 hats in a production, so you'll see me sometimes running back and forth. But maybe a short answer to what I do, I create my own like network when I do a basketball game or any sport. Cameras are coming in on fiber. I do audio with Dante, and I create a separate network for Dante. So it is quite the setup. I don't know that I could do a quick answer to that, but if you are interested, hit me up in Discord. I would love. I've let college students come in and watch a show, and I take it like a whole day, and we go through the setup and troubleshooting, and if anybody's interested, just hit me up in Discord.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Sounds like an awesome second hour, Doug.
Yeah. So we don't need videos as much as just stills, but videos would be great too if you have a GoPro there. Someone put that in the second hour list in Discord, and so I remember. And then we'll follow up and we'll get you scheduled, Doug. We'd love to have you break it down. Next question.
Roger Miles, Lake Zurich, Illinois. Apple has renamed Camera Roll to Recents and added a Home tab to be the default view in Photos/video. Can anyone explain why and point to documentation on the subject? Trying to figure out what but I do have a suggestion. Yeah, and it's one of the things that I found out when talking to some people I know at Apple, because over the course of the years I made some friends there. They're looking at a really broad swath of different kinds of users, and sometimes when we get into these, why did they rename that or do something? It was for consistency across different various apps and sub-apps between teams working at Apple, and they do tend to go through these phases where you're numbering it that way and we're numbering it this way over here. For the end user, it's annoying, but there's often some internal reason like that, although I can't.
A lot of times it's part of a larger plan that might happen over years. I mean, you want to remember that like the M1 that we think of as the first chip was probably hatched in 2010. 2009, 2010 it's a 10-year. And so then there was this like slow rollout, and you can do some things with your apps, and you should do this, and you should do that. Apple works in very, very long curves. And it was rumored that they were doing this a long time ago. So I think that in the same sense, when they start changing names, it usually means that they're trying to tie it into a device that you may use. For instance, recents and home are easier to say to Siri than they are to than think camera roll. And so it's
And
probably
I don't know that
things,
this is connected at all, but there's an home icon now on your phone. Now, that may or may not have anything to do with that, but it may be that they have some vision long term where those features are important to the phone, the home app that manages your household stuff. We don't know.
By the way, I got some little plugs. I don't know if I have them sitting here, but I got these little guys. Putting these in. I'll show you guys more of it later. It was so easy. This is what I've been waiting for HomeKit, was that I'm still learning how to make it work, but these are Meros, I guess. And I literally, like, there's a little RFID, and I took a picture of it, and it just got added, and then it just works. And I'm getting to the point
I've
where
used that exact one for I'd say 2 weeks or so. It's awesome.
I'm working on an action so that all these lights that I have, I can just go set, turn on the set, and it just, everything, powers up, and turn it off as I leave. And so I'm
How does that spell Neros?
Meross. And it's not very expensive. That's the thing, is they've come down. They're not expensive. It works with Alexa and Google Assistant as well. So it's not only HomeKit. It's just the HomeKit one. It was really easy to set up anyway. But again, to get back to, I was thinking about that because of Siri, is that a lot of times they're changing these names so that you can say them more readily if you're putting them into actions. Next question.
Moving on to Keenan Campbell at Princeton, Illinois. In Zoom, using a Blackmagic Design 6K ATEM Pro, Video Assist 12G, and MacBook Pro, my video looks great on all the Blackmagic Design hardware, but in Zoom, the video is substantially darker. Is this a Zoom quirk or a setting that I'm missing? And note, he has to gain it up with the ATEM camera control just to make the video usable.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I'm curious if it's only happening in Zoom or in any other app on the computer as well. Maybe check if you are actually sending log material, but viewing it with a LUT on the camera and on the monitor, but still passing through a log image.
My experience is that Zoom's gamma is much darker than everything else. Like, the way it's interpreting the video is absolutely darker and more punchy. Like, so it's more contrasty and darker than everything, than QuickTime. Because what I do is, when I'm checking my frame, I used to open up QuickTime for it, and I still do that to some degree. I open up QuickTime and go make movie, and then it just shows me what's coming into my video. I stopped doing that when I want to do it Zoom. I actually open Zoom and just let it pop up my screen, because it's the only way I know what it actually looks like. Because the colors will be are different, darker, all those things is definitely something that Zoom does. It's I have other fires to make requests for Zoom, so I haven't gone down the path of, hey, I'd like a LUT for Zoom. Not that I'm not going there, just that I haven't gone there yet. There's other things that I want to ask for first. Anyway, Courtney, and but it would be great to be able to load a LUT. It's just it's just a matrix. I mean, it's a little text file. Like, let me just load a LUT for Zoom. That would be amazing. You have to admit, it would be awesome. Anyway, go ahead, Courtney.
Keenan didn't say what type of PC they're on, but if you're on a Windows PC, if you go into your video driver for like Intel chipset, there is a place in there to control the brightness and contrast of just the video that is put in Windows within a window. So maybe those settings are set low. So go in and check that. Maybe that is what's causing your display problems of live video within a window.
But yeah, we've definitely seen some issues. And by the way, congratulations on the video assist. Somehow they didn't do an announcement on it, and it just kind of slipped out onto their webpage. And I was looking for something else on their webpage, and I looked through it. Holy smokes, is that a great little monitor? I have a bunch of their little video assists. They've been inexpensive and everything else, but it's HDR. It's got tons of scopes. It's got recording. It'll record to an external drive. It's a really capable little monitor. I don't know how much it costs, and I'm not buying one yet, but I was just truly amazed at how far that one's come. It's really, really great. Peter, and then Mickey.
Yes, I was going to say, like you did. First of all, he did actually say he's using a MacBook Pro.
Oh, right. Yeah.
but
I see that.
I'm like you. I discovered So actually, I tried to use I used FaceTime and then compared it to Zoom, and the coloring was way different.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. So it's definitely, there's definitely a thing there. Next question. Oh, go ahead, Mickey. Mickey, I'm sorry, I missed you. I just didn't.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was just looking at the page of the video assist. It's also a USB capture device, so that's pretty darn
Yeah,
cool for
it
a
is
monitor.
it is like literally a web presenter. Like you could literally put it into the video assist.
But 1080.
But 1080. It's a
And
1080.
yeah.
Basically, it's a 1080 web presenter with scopes. Like it's quite a piece of hardware. Go ahead, Stuart.
Following exactly the same path that Mickey was just on, there's an update for the video assist that says output to USB webcam for live streaming. Looks like it's only
Right,
gone up
and
in the last couple of days.
that's what we're talking about. That's the
kicker. I thought you took. Okay, I missed that part. That something had changed because the video assist monitors are absolutely great on cameras.
Well, they are, and it's the fact that it is. I also want to do something here for you. Hold on. One second.
Can I point out the Blackmagic, the tactile sensation when you're using them is far superior to many other products.
I would say it's far
They
superior.
feel good in the hand.
Well, but have you? I think the thing that I like about the cameras in general is just that I feel like the cameras really took it to a whole nother level as far as the interface goes. You know, that's the thing that I'm most impressed with. So I just want to show you. I'm going to share my screen here for a second.
Yeah, and don't forget that it's stable playback too. So for those of you looking for pre-records,
playback.
it's one of the best ways.
So if you guys look at this, this is the one on the right is, I just literally just took this while we were talking. The one on the right is QuickTime. The one on the left is Zoom. So you'll see that the reds are much different. There's less green in the Zoom one. There's more red. So if you wonder why I come in red, sometimes because I checked it on QuickTime and not on Zoom. So it looks more red in the Zoom one. And this is the same screen. This is the same feed. This is like, obviously not quite the same frame, but that's because one's getting a slightly lower latency. But that gives you a sense of that, and that's not something you can change in the operating system. That's something that Zoom is doing, and that's why you have to kind of create. You have to correct for Zoom essentially to make that work. And in general, for streaming, it's something that I do pretty often, which is that you want to look at a color accurate monitor, but I look at my phone, or I look at a computer, and I look at a computer because I want to see what the stream looks like, not what the color accurate monitor looks like, because it can often be different. Stuart, and then we'll move on.
So maybe a thing we should request from Zoom is scopes within Zoom for our output.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I'm going to be putting in my new system. I'm putting in a Mac Mini that is going to just be scopes for video, so that I'll be able to pin anybody here. Well, I'll have a room that's sending out the current speaker into the system, and so that I can just push them into scopes. And because that'll be part of my router, I'll be able to push it back into Zoom. So so if you guys are doing something, I can show you what you look like in the scopes. Any person that's joining, I'll be able to push you back in with scopes so that we can discuss highlights and dark areas and so on and so forth on the other side of Zoom. And I should have that up later this week, but definitely by next week. Next question.
Stuart from the panel, Stuart Fairweather in Melbourne, says, specifically without spoilers, and this came up, I think, was it last week? Can we discuss the deepfake used in the final episode of The Mandalorian and why it appeared to have ... less than stellar motion tracking, say, compared to the Clue and Tron Legacy?
We are going to talk about Mandalorian on Saturday. The only thing I'll say without a spoiler is that's not a deepfake. Anyway, so next question.
Moving along, Doug Ferguson of Fort Wayne and also in the panel. For those using the Nvidia RTX 2080 graphics cards for editing, do you see a difference from previous versions of the cards? I have a GTX 1080. Should I upgrade to the 2080?
I don't know if go ahead, Jason.
I mean, if you are a gamer gaming multi-monitor in 4K using full ray tracing and have the power to actually do it, and if you can actually tell the difference between 120 frames and 90 frames a second, sure. And if you also have, $1,400 or I'm sorry, $2,400.
I'm not clear that you would see any difference in editing. in that, unless you are working at 8K, or something that's really big. I mean, maybe 4K on a redraw, but I'd be doubtful. The 1080 is a pretty powerful card. Chris, and then Jeffrey, and then Stuart, and then we'll move on.
Mine's more of a question. Isn't the 3080 less expensive than the 2080 by a lot?
This is what happens when you talk to Ask Mac people what it is, because we're not allowed to have NVIDIA, so we don't know anything about them. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, ray tracing is more for the gaming side, but 4K, and if you're doing any 360 videos, the RTX. And also, if you're also using multiple monitor systems where you're actually got the video on more than one monitor, then the RTX will really make a difference over the GTX.
Go ahead, Stuart.
I'd have to ask Doug, what are you editing on? Any program that is CUDA enabled, such as Resolve, yes, get the most recent card that you can afford, because you will get a significant performance improvement. Don't forget that the way Resolve accesses the CUDA cores is just as a group of cores. It doesn't matter how many cards you've got in the system, or if it's SLI, it doesn't even want SLI set up, or the more recent, is it NVLink? It just wants the cores, and the more cores you throw at it, the faster it'll render on your output. But that's the same for any CUDA-enabled software.
Yeah, I use Premiere, and so just debating. It's been a while since I've upgraded cards, and I'm building other computers and swapping out things, and I'm just wondering, if I get a new card, should I just move the good card to the editing computer and kind of bump up cards?
Right now, wait for the 3080, because the prices of the 3 Series is substantially lower
you can't
for
get
performance.
any graphics cards right now. For some reason, you just can't get them.
A lot of COVID makes it really hard to make things. So it's I think that's happening all over the world constantly. Next question.
Moving on, this comes from the Maranatha Spanish Church in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm trying to educate some of the church board members who continually bring guests to sing using the microphone of whatever device they're logged into Zoom with. We all hear the distorted or messed up, I guess, sound, yet they continue. How can we moderate that behavior?
I find the easiest way to moderate behaviors like that is to show people. So get a singer, send them with a good mic, figure it out, like work with it ahead of time, and show them what it can sound like. A lot of, it's just a matter of proving it, and then the thing is that once someone hears a great singer singing with a good mic into something that works, they'll have a hard time going back, and so you could probably get a kit, or two that you send out. I don't think you have to go crazy, but I think that working through that, it's just people seeing the difference. And if they can't see the difference, then you're in trouble. But if they're really distorting and not coming in, I think that would probably be the way I would do it. I tend to just want to show people things. Go ahead, Jason.
I mean, my guess, if you want to go with hardware, is probably you need higher SPL, and just a record and a quick loopback is going to make all the difference.
Literally, it probably is a SM58, which you probably have somewhere in the church, and then even something as simple as like a XLR to USB cable to at least try it, just to see how far it'll go. Go ahead, Marty.
So there's in addition to hardware, well, first of all, do that. Play that good recording, but also play it in comparison to the distorted sound, so that they really hear the difference.
Well, and I would do it live, like get somebody to do it live for you, because if you play a recording, they'll be like, well, the recording sounds good, but the live isn't good. So I think you do need someone to do it live in the thing.
But I think the question is more around philosophy and about values. So when people are watching this, that is their first and final impression of your church, of the church that they're watching. And if you're doing a presentation that is distorted, less than optimal, it kind of gives people an impression about how much you care about what you're presenting. It's like doing a bad sermon or, bad musical performance. How much do you care about what you're presenting to people? This is your church.
And I mean, a lot of times it's not what people notice. They're not going to send you complaints about it. It's just how they feel. Like, do they feel like this is a really, kind of a silly little thing that we're doing, or do they feel like it's actually moving them and getting them excited? And that has a variety of impacts on a church, both in both monetary impact as well as community impact. If people, it really depends on, they're coming to church because of how they feel coming to church. So if you make it feel bad, or if you make it feel small, that's definitely going to impact how many people show up, what the tithing looks like, all those things are affected. And they may not be affected like, oh, I'm not going to go because the audio was bad on the singer. It's more of a, I don't think that's very important, because it just feels small, it doesn't feel like you're putting extra work into it. So I think that's one of the things that you want to, kind of think about in that process. Go ahead, Courtney, and then Bill.
Another thing to remember is because of the echo cancellation and everything, most people can't tell what their microphone sounds like unless somebody who's listening on the other side tells them. And even if they're monitoring locally, it may sound fine in their local. If they have a sound mixer or somebody at a board actually controlling the sound, may sound fine to him, but he doesn't hear the feedback on Zoom. Maybe give a couple of people on Zoom a little whiteboard that says, gee, your sound sounds awful, that they can hold up at some point to let the person know to check their gain structure.
And go ahead, and Bill, real quick, I realize we're running out of time, so go ahead.
Yeah, I'll do this real fast. Don't accept, though, that because you don't have a ton of money, you can't do this well. Yes, mega churches have engineers and everything, but literally an SM58 on an XLR cable into Zoom can sound fabulous, even if you have very little money. So don't accept that you can't do it. Because you don't have resources.
We're going to go pretty fast now because we're running out of time.
Okay, TJ Asher's up next, Minneapolis. I was watching a video about the 35th anniversary THX Deep Note opening, and they showed what looked like a volumetric mixing process in THX that looks similar to Dolby ATMOS. How does THX compare or relate to Dolby ATMOS?
Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, well, THX was problems with the entire sound chain. So THX really went through and standardized what went on in the theater as well as how things were recorded and passed through. And it did make sure that the levels. Dolby Atmos doesn't really do that. It isn't solving the same problem.
It actually, well, I'd argue that Dolby is more aggressive than THX was about how it's solving that problem. How it's standardizing that from the moment that you record it all the way through to the end product. It's probably, THX was George wanting to make sure that his movies sounded good. Like that was his complaint, is that it was, he just needed to give people a big logo and use his movies as a way to force the whole industry forward. And I think that what's forced it through is now it's going to be, I think the only thing left is going to be the theaters that are really high end. Go ahead, Greg, and then Mickey.
Yeah, as far as I know, THX was really only a standard for the speakers. It was a standard for playback. It wasn't, there was no specific, I mean, there might have been a small encoding process involved, but it was not anywhere near what Dolby was. I mean, it wasn't designed to do that. It was just a set of specs for a playback system.
It was just trying to get a minimum quality up. Go ahead, Mickey, real quick, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I just looked at their website. Apparently, they have this thing called the THX spatial rendering. So I guess they may be making their own format. I don't know, but DTS X has been around for a while, but it hasn't really gotten traction because Atmos has been utilized like for much longer than DTS X has been around.
I think we are getting to a point where Atmos and Vision are taking the clear lead of everything else. There's a lot of other people fiddling with it, but I don't think that anyone else is as focused. Next question.
Next question comes from Roberto Barrow of Plymouth Meeting, Pennsylvania. Victor, how's QLab on the M1?
Victor isn't here right now. He was here earlier this morning, but he's not here now. You might have to jump into a panel. I think Victor has a lot of stuff in the mornings right now, so he's not here. So we'll just move on. But when you see Victor, ask that question again. I know he was here earlier, so you probably did that, but we'll try to catch him. Next question.
TJ Asher is back in with Minneapolis. Can Schy give us a second hour or part of an hour on the video he cut for Victor and Grant? How did he decide to make the choices he did? It was said that he did a couple of different cuts. Can we see some of those and also have the choices explained here?
I think we can definitely make it a section. I don't know if maybe you can do a whole hour on it of the whole production, but
wouldn't take an hour.
Yeah, but let's figure that out. I'd love to do some kind of show and tells where we maybe like 20-minute show and tells, like 3 of them in an hour. I think that'd be a fun second hour, maybe on a Friday, is to do some show and tells. So let's think about that, where we break it into, like, not to go too TED, but like 18-minute segments.
if that.
But I mean, I think it'd be fun to do little presentations where we have a couple people that we line up rather than a whole hour on certain things. I know I have little projects that'd be fun to show that I don't think would go for an hour, but would be fun for 15 minutes or something like that. Go ahead, Greg.
I mean, we tend to focus a lot on the how of things, and I think it might be nice to do a second hour on the why.
Yeah, I like it.
Well,
yeah,
let's include that word in the debrief. Yeah, the breakdown.
Absolutely. Next question.
Stephen Bauer of Seattle is in with, I believe I heard today, Loopback on Mac Big Sur requires some hoops with turning on extensions. The website says all of Rogue Amoeba's products now offer compatibility with Apple's new operating system, macOS 11 Big Sur, with no known issues. Are they hiding the extensions trick?
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
No, they're not hiding the extensions trick, and that's true whether you have Apple Silicon or if you're on an Intel Mac. Either way, in Big Sur, you simply have to disable, enable outside extensions, because that's how Big Sur was built. So no, they're not hiding anything, and it's not that bad.
Next question.
Scott Wasserman in Detroit says, I've heard a lot about Dante. Can you explain what it is and major benefits and use cases for it?
No, who wants to talk about Dante? Yeah, go ahead, Marty.
So Dante is a digital audio network that is capable of transporting 64 channels of audio in both directions over your Ethernet network. So any computer that has the software in it, the drivers, and any piece of hardware that is a Dante-enabled piece of hardware, like mixers, recorders, wireless microphones, receivers, and even some microphones directly, can put audio onto the network. And then any of these devices can also take audio off of the network and selecting individual channels. So it's like a distribution system, it's a transport system, it's a way to send one signal to many pieces. It's and it does it with very low latency, although it does place some pretty significant demands on a network. So you have to set your network up properly. And it works very well. And there are a couple of different versions of the drivers. So in a computer, whether it be Windows or Mac, you would either get a virtual sound card, so which is just what it sounds like. Instead of an physical audio interface that gets connected to the computer by USB, this accepts and exchanges audio from your network. There's also a version called VIA, which is a little bit like a virtual patch cable, because it can exchange audio within individual programs on your computer or somewhere else. I could talk further, but I'll stop there for now.
Alex, you're muted.
Sorry, I was typing. It's probably another hour on Dante that we can do. It comes up often, but I think that when we talk to it, but it probably wouldn't hurt, and probably even get the guys from Audinate to come on, and so to talk through that process. But it's funny. There's in the event world, it's very popular. And then in the broadcast world, sometimes we end up with Maddie, and then we end up with a bunch of boxes that have to get between the Maddie and Dante. But it seems to be two different, oftentimes two different worlds there. Okay, we're almost to the top of the hour, and I see Ellen is here. Hi, Ellen. Good to see you here. And let's go ahead and let's jump into the last two questions, and then we'll get to the top of the hour.
Okay, Joachim Verens of Delft, the Netherlands, is in here with Alex. Did a short show on deconstructing studio sets and studio shots and showing and talking over what was right and wrong on them. I really learned a lot from it. It would be nice to do that again, maybe a second-hour feature, he proposes.
In general, what I'm thinking about for next year is to have an hour, maybe not every week, but an hour where we break different things down. So sets are one of them, lower thirds, super sources, sweepers. I have a tendency to collect them. That's my prime. I think I've talked about it before. The reason I have tv.youtube.com is because it's easy to do screen capture of it. And so, and I've done, you'll see my teardowns that I've done on the Pixel Core YouTube page that have been there for a long time now. But you can see that that's how the reason that those came up was because I do that on my own. And someone said, "Oh, you should put that on YouTube." so that's how that showed up. So I think that we could probably build a couple weeks or a month or two of doing those, and probably then come back to different things where we just break things down. Like, let's look at how everyone's using a mic. Let's look at how people are doing remotes. Let's look at. So I've been thinking about that as part of the Friday sessions. Maybe not every week, but we might go through a spin of it for a couple weeks or maybe 6 weeks to kind of play with it. But I think we could all just discuss it, show the video. I mean, I can talk about it some, but I think we can all talk about that. Anyway, last question.
And it comes from Stuart Fairweather, and the panelist in Melbourne, Australia. Following Jason's comment, maybe the last question for the first hour. What one thing would panelists like to get from old Saint Nick, or for Hanukkah, or whatever? What's your holiday gift?
Talk really fast. You have to talk really fast. Yeah. Go ahead, Jeff.
I got them already. That's my AirPods Pro.
No, there you go. There you go. Very good. Jason.
I want a teleprompter that I don't have to mess with.
Crazy. That's crazy. Go ahead, Doug.
I want a Ross switcher and expressions.
He's going all the way. If you're gonna ask, there you go. Like it's I got my eye on a good Angenu lens too. I don't know if I could ask for that for Christmas. Go ahead, Stuart, and then Greg.
A spare Scion and a team of coders to crack the firmware and write all the features we're missing.
Go ahead, Greg, and then Mickey and John.
Yeah, not so bad. Just a high-end pair of IEMs.
There you go. Mickey.
What one thing? Just one thing. Never mind.
His list is too long to pair for Santa's
Go
lap.
ahead, John.
I would like a terabit network to support 2110 coming soon.
Very good. TJ and Hosmuk.
Money, so I can just go get whatever I want.
Yeah, there you go. Hosmuk.
2 6K cameras.
There you go. Paul and then Jeffrey.
Microphone.
Yeah, like a
microphone.
Another microphone.
Another microphone. I know.
Another microphone?
See, but that would be kind of. That would be like, what do you give the person who has everything? Like all the mics. Yeah. So, but yeah. Anyway. So, but would you use it? Is the question. All right, Jeffrey.
I want everybody in this panel to have a safe and healthy holiday and a prosperous 2021.
There you go. A good way to close that out. So anyway, I think we had some relatively good suggestions there, and now we're going to go ahead and shift to our next hour. So I'm really excited here. We have Ellen Fitton. Is that right? Did I pronounce it correctly?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay, great. And Ellen is Ellen. Tell us a little bit about what you do and what you've done.
Well, if you want to start in the back and
Please
work
do.
our way forward.
Please do.
And I'll try not to dwell too long on the past because it's long and checkered.
Where are you coming in from today?
I'm in Brooklyn.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. This is sort of home base for Sonic Designs, which is the company that I work for, which is basically it's a two-man shop, myself and Dan Gerhard. I came out of SUNY Fredonia's Tonmeister program way back in the day and spent many years working the New York City studio scene when there was a New York City studio scene. I could rattle off all the places I worked and none of them exist anymore. It's quite sad. And I kind of went from recording music to getting more into mastering. I did a lot of classical, which is where I met Jeff Francis. And a shout out to Jeff and thanking him for bringing me in today. And then mastering sort of died in New York as well too. There's just no more studios, no more mastering houses.
And why do you think? And why would you? What precipitated that?
The death of mastering.
Yeah.
Well, the studios were already dead. Mastering, I think, kept on for a while because as people were trying to figure out how to work in their basements on their Pro Tools and stuff, they still wanted that final stage to go somewhere where it was a well-tuned room, there was pro-level gear, they had another pair of ears to really listen. So I think that hung in for a while. And then as you know, the engineering population started to, you know, the older people started to sort of phase out and the younger kids are coming up. They're all doing it in the box and they see these mastering plugins that say, hey, we can do this in the box. So they stopped having a desire to go to a mastering studio. So that sort of drove mastering, you know, to the home market as well. I mean, there's, you know, a few isolated places. I mean, Sterling is still going, but they've way scaled back their operation. So it just, the next generation doesn't really see the need for another layer of engineering weighing in on their mixes. So I think that's.
And how do you think that affects the end product?
Well, listen to the radio. You know, look, I'm not saying there's not.
I mean, I've seen both. You know, I worked in. We've done events in like Village Studios in LA where you have a Neve and there's a studio and there's engineers and, you know, John Mayer, for instance, you know, we did a thing with him there and that's like his studio that he uses and he still expects all of that. But then, you know, we've done stuff like we were in Bruno Mars, you know, studio. That's just him, you know, him and Mark are like, and they're just doing their thing, you know, and they're completely self-contained, and it's just two very different, or not completely, but largely self-contained. So, but what do you think it affects as far, like I know we can listen to the radio, but where do you think it really makes a difference? Like, what do you hear that's different? Distortion?
Everything is excuse my language, but the shit is compressed out of it. You know, everything is squashed. It's totally squashed. Right. It's borderline distorted. And the kids are listening on their earbuds and unless you educate them, they don't necessarily know any different. That's just how it sounds. So it's a battle. It's the loudness wars. They rage on. You know, there's I don't know how to solve it. I get asked that question a lot. It's
well, and what do you think of? And I apologize. I'm gonna suck up the time a little bit at the beginning because I want to get it started. I have to actually go work at a studio.
Okay.
I'll leave before the bottom of the hour, and Jeff will take over and Bill will take over. But I'm very curious. Like, so, do you think that things like Dolby Atmos or Dolby Atmos for music makes any difference in that world as far as mixing? Because it's much more technical and it sounds much different.
It does, and you know, I've been to a bunch of things hosted by Dolby about Atmos and all of that. You know, I would love for it to catch on. It means more work for everybody. It's a really amazing thing to hear when it's done well. But again, it comes back to everybody wants to listen on their earbuds. You know, even at home, they're not listening in 5.1. Most people to their TVs, even though stuff is broadcast in 5.1. I don't know how you get the public to want to hear better quality audio. It's
well, do you think things like Apple, like really supporting it with the new AirPod Max and the AirPod Pros, where you're starting to see much better audio in general, like as a consumer device, as opposed to I think a lot of this has been kind of high-end vertical before.
Yeah, well, I hope that brings awareness to it and
Mm-hmm.
makes people crave it. I mean, there's this vinyl has made its way back in some format. So
What do you think of vinyl?
Vinyl's great, but I mean, it has a sound all its own. But having lived through vinyl to CD and CD to MP3 and all of that, I'm not exactly looking back. I just got rid of most of my records. It's too much to store. It's it's upkeep, and I've moved on.
Yeah. So what do you do on a day-to-day basis? What's your day-to-day? What do you work on, and how do you do it?
So since we've talking a lot about mastering, but I've actually sort of moved on from mastering, and what this Sonic Designs does is live. We do all kinds of live events, and we do all manner of jobs for live events, and it really depends.
And when you say live events, are you talking about concerts, corporate, public? What kind of?
It kind of runs the gamut. We do some corporate. We do a lot of special events, things like the 12/12 concert for after Sandy. We did the last presidential debate in Charleston, or the last big debate. Things like that. We do for many years. We did the Radio City Christmas show. We're not.
And when you say you do it, do you do the mixing and the speakers? I mean, like the whole pipeline, or is it?
Again, it depends on the event, what aspect of it we're hired to deal with. Now, something like the Christmas show was a huge, all-encompassing thing, designing the sound system at Radio City. It was doing pre-records of tracks. It was implementing the tap shoe mics for the dancers. It was overseeing the touring companies, because there were several touring companies of the Christmas show that go out. There was one in residence in Nashville, which is no longer there. So there's a lot of different things. Now we just recently were hired to work on the NBA restart, and basically our goal for that, or what we were hired to do, was create the content. So we created all the artificial crowd for that event.
Where did you get the crowds?
A lot of it was mining different sound effects databases and then affecting it from there. We did add some Foley for certain situations, but a lot of it was really working with what we could find.
We saw this. I worked on an event where they were talking about Sky Sports had recorded all this stuff and given it to Electronic Arts, for their games. And then when they had to do the COVID thing, they came back to Electronic Arts and they were like, that stuff we recorded, we'd really like to use that. So it went kind of the other direction.
Yeah, there's a lot of different philosophies about that. I know some of the sports started out using their video game audio, but most of that is contaminated and can't really be used for our purposes,
How is it contaminated?
Well, for example, with basketball, it's filled with sneaker squeaks or ref whistles, and to sit and go through all that material and take all that out, it's not worth the time. It's easier to build it actually from scratch.
And what are you building it in?
Pro Tools. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Let's go ahead and jump to a couple of questions. We've got a couple questions rolling in here. Jeff, do you want to ask your first question? You have Jeff's in the same thing.
Sure thing. So some other people are asking about the Emmy behind you. Can you tell us what that was for and what went into that production? Basically, talk through the audio team and also the schedule of pre-production, planning, rehearsal, and actual event.
Okay, so that'll be our one question for the day. So the Emmy was for Jesus Christ Superstar Live, and that is an undertaking like nothing we have ever seen. So our job was about the mix to the house. There was 2 trucks, two A1s, Tom Holmes and John. Oh, his name's going to escape me. But so those guys were mixing, doing the air mix. We were responsible for the mix in the house. So that basically entailed 3 CL5s cascaded together. Oh, there you go. There's our messy workspace out at front of house. So, and one desk was sort of dedicated to the strings, one to the band proper, and one to all the singers. And there were 2 operators there. And then there's one other slide, Jeff. I think that's just that's also from that one that just shows. There you go. So that was my little booth. My responsibility on that job was doing a submix of all the chorus and extra mics for air. So I had my own little hut, and I was just doing that portion of the air mix because there was just too many soloists and too much orchestra for the 2 mixers in the truck to handle. So I was essentially the third.
Hey, Ellen, how many mics would you have live at one time when you're doing that big a chorus mix?
There's probably about 14, 16 chorus could be hot at any one time. And there were a lot of shout out lines, which is why it was a much more difficult chorus mix to manage, because those lines really had to be sort of ridden to some degree, even though we did have some things in the Dugan. But just the amount of moving around and the volume on stage, it really required a separate person. As far as how much time, I mean, rehearsals were going on off-site for weeks prior to sort of the build in the facility. So this was in basically it was a 4 walls old building in Brooklyn. There's no infrastructure whatsoever for doing a live show. Everything was brought in, all the rigging and the lights and the PA and the stage and all of it. There were, I think, 3 monitor mixers responsible for different groupings, you of musicians and chorus and lead. We had people on in-ears. We also had wedges on stage. And
you seem so calm. How much adrenaline runs through your system during a show like that? It must be crazy.
It is crazy, but you just, that's why you rehearse it a lot. So, some of the adrenaline is, then finger memory or muscle memory sort of takes over during the course of that. I mean, they did do, I think, 3 full run-throughs, like Friday and Saturday, and then the air mix, the live to air was Sunday. And they did have one of those pre-records running in the background should there be some disaster with the live broadcast and it all went to hell. They had something to switch over to. I'm trying to give, Jeff asked about numbers of personnel. So there had to be probably 7 or 8 A2s at any given time. And at least 6 RF techs. That's a lot of head mics and headset mics there you go. That's a lot of people to dress all at once. And just the costuming and the choreography required constant tweaking of all sorts of little elements of, where do we hide this mic? How do we keep this mic from falling off? All of that. So that was a lot of work for the RF team. There were some sound effects. There's a sound effects guy, a dedicated effects guy.
I love the little pictures. It must be a disaster if the wrong mic gets to the wrong character.
Yes, because then you mess up front of house, you mess up the chorus console, you mess up the truck guys, so yeah, It's very the monitor guy, all of it, yeah. So it's a lot to keep track of, but they had a great team. A lot of the folks who do that are also, they come out of the Met and they do all the wireless for the guys at the Met. So it was all the best people in the New York metro area were there for those period of weeks. I think we were on site at the Armory. I think, well, they might have probably started building a couple of weeks before I got there. I was one of the last ones to come in. And it's actually kind of a funny story when we got hired to do this, and it was clear not one front of house mixer could do all of those live for that kind of broadcast. So it was going to be both Dan and myself mixing front of house. Meanwhile, we had another little off-Broadway show running that needed to be put up in Chicago, and we were coming into NCAA, and we do work for NCAA, and I was doing this, trying to figure out the schedule so that I could be on site for all the rehearsals that were necessary for
Is sports
Superstar.
crazier for theater for you, or is theater crazier than sports?
Theater is probably a little harder, but they both there are mindsets that have to be overcome in either one. But just to finish up my little anecdote about doing it. So as we were getting closer and closer to Superstar, it was clear we couldn't navigate all these events that we had committed to. So I had to drop out of Superstar so that I could go to Chicago and do the put in of that show, and then come back and jump right into NCAA.
How close to opening night did that happen? That must have
This
been-
we were about 2.5 weeks out.
Wow.
So I was less than pleased, as you could well imagine. So what
I imagine the whole company was less than pleased.
they had somebody else. And then I was in Chicago longer than I had to be because that show took longer to put up, and then there was a blizzard and I got held over. So I finally get back from Chicago, and I'm just worn out, and I'm cranky because I didn't get to do Superstar, and I'm on my way to yoga class, and I get a phone call, and it's my boss, and he says to me, so how are you? I'm like, fine. He's like, so what are you doing this week? And I'm like, you know what I'm doing this week. And he proceeds to tell me that they've added a position to Superstar, which is this chorus submix for air, because the whole thing's gotten out of hand. And there's like nobody left. There's nobody left in New York to hire. It's like, can you do this? And I'm like, I'm going to go to yoga, and I'm going to call you after yoga. And I went and I got my Serenity Now, and then I was like, okay, I have to see if I can find some clean clothes. And I was off to Brooklyn, and I spent the next the next week to 10 days getting all up to speed to that, and then running back and forth to NCAA and trying to get people to cover that. So I ended up being there, not in the position I was originally expecting to do, but it's a job like that, dozens of lighting guys, riggers, musicians, catering, you're in a building that's got nothing. It's really got nothing. And there's another little amusing story about how they trucked in sand to put on the set, literally a truck with a conveyor belt bringing in sand, for the better part of a day. And you can imagine that no dust gets kicked up from that into the microphones that anybody has to worry about.
Oh, perish the thought.
Sand
in a big warehouse?
Yes, because they wanted it to be,
in
authentic.
the desert. Jesus Christ Superstar, yeah.
This is where Jesus lives, right? And then, the next day the choreographer comes in and the dancers come in, and it's like, oops, we can't dance on the sand. So they had to scrape all of it up, shovel it back into bins, truck it all back out of the warehouse.
Gosh.
Yeah,
I would have loved to have seen if they'd done dancing on the sand and kicked up a giant cloud. With the lighting guys.
Yeah, it was dust for days.
Lighting men and women would have been crazy.
people were walking around with face masks before we knew we were going to need face masks. So, you know, so stuff happens. But if I had to give a round number to sort of help Jeff wrap his head around it, I'd say there was 100 people to 125 people on site in the thick of it, and that's not including maybe there were people on the front end and the back end who weren't there for the actual run-throughs, but people who helped with the put in and the strike. So it's a pretty big operation. Is that
so? Do you want to? Yeah, I think you covered it.
Jeff, Jeff looks like he's got follow-up. I don't know.
Jeff, go.
Yeah. So we've seen, you know, at least 4 CL5 consoles talking about in-house mix, your submix. You mentioned the truck. Is this all Dante together?
There's Dante,
including wireless.
I believe there was some RedNet. There was probably Maddie at the truck. There's a whole lot, and I won't even begin to know exactly everything that we used. But I know obviously the CLs were all Dante together. All the monitor guys, they like the Digico. So there was a whole ring of Digicos. And then I believe the trucks were Calrec. So yeah, and Firehouse was the equipment vendor, and they're very, very skilled at making all those different things talk to each other. So yeah, so it's a little of everything, and you know, that's a whole crew of 4 or 5 guys who are just sitting there figuring all that out and doing, you know, the Dante controller and the Maddie and making all the streams go where they need to go and locking it down so nobody unpatches the wrong thing. So that's a whole subset of people. And then there's the comm guys and all the permutations of comm that need to happen for different people. Yeah.
So we have a whole bunch of questions that are starting to stack up here. So let me get to the first one, and then Jeff, please kind of grab the next thing. Jason Beach comes in with, what do you think of Netflix's mastering standards? They're rigid, sure, but I've heard mostly positive things from teams once they're familiar with the process. Have you dealt with that?
I have not, and I have to say I'm not familiar with what the Netflix standards are, so I can't help you there. I guess I should look at that, but it's not a part of what I do. So.
When you deliver stuff into Broadway, stuff like that, are there standards, and have they changed at all? I've noticed that there's some changing in the Zoom world. You know, we were used to be at minus something level for the LUFS target, and then it moves a little bit over time. Have you seen standards creeping around lately?
No. I mean, when we do broadcast stuff, I think the neg 24 is kind of what we shoot for. I find typically people are a little over that. It seems like 24 is the benchmark, and most people are running at 22.
So 24-ish?
24-ish, yes.
There you go. Mickey has his hand up in the panel. Mickey, do you have a question?
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the Netflix loudness standard. They kind of went back to how it was done maybe 15 years ago, like back in the DVD era. They're targeting now negative 27 LKFS, but dialogue gated, because majority of the standards now are based off the entire program mix. But Netflix went back to, like, let's get dialogue at the same level, and everything else can fall anywhere you want it to be, depending on your creative decisions, which I kind of like have the dialogue at the same level. So if you switch channels, dialogue's all the same, or change to a different movie, dialogue's all the same. But the creatives have the flexibility to make effects as loud as they want, or music as loud as they want, or as quiet as they want. So I kind of like what Netflix is doing.
Interesting. We do have a question from Michael J. from New York City that I really liked, and he's asking you what your favorite studio experience has been with an artist when a mistake became a jewel. Ellen, do you have anything that you remember that you were going, oh my God, this is all going to fall apart and it's going to be terrible, but in the end, it turned out to be something you still look back on fondly?
Well, I know I made some bad punches back in the day and wiped some vocals, and I remember Arif Martin standing up and stomping out of the room because he didn't think he could get Shaka to sing those lines again. But she did, and I think it was all fine. It took Arif a long time to get over that for me, get over that with me. But
now, was that tape days or was that digital? And did
that
you?
was tape days. That was
Tape days.
The studio Studer, big Studer 24 track, and with the remote and pushing those buttons and punching in and out. Yeah.
Well, she did okay. Chaka Khan did pretty well as far as her career, so I don't think you killed her career.
No, I think she did do okay. I don't know if I can pull up a memory that quite fits that criteria, but that sticks in my head. And the other sort of highlight that I remember from my back in those days was doing a Joe Cocker record, and we, had him, and he had a band. And they all played at the same time. It was not like an overdub situation, and they were all in Studio A at Atlantic Studios. Baffles everywhere, mics everywhere, Hammond B3, keyboard, piano, drums. It was like, he had a big band, and he's in this tiny little vocal overdub booth, and we were looking forward to, once the band was recorded, we'd have him in the room doing his vocal. And he did a scratch vocal with this one track. And it just, like, I was weeping by the end of the take. It was like one take, and it was like just beautiful. So those are the kinds of things that stay with you for a long time.
Sometimes these artists are artists for a reason, and they can just turn it on and come out with something magical. And you wonder where that comes from. Amazing. Matt Cool has a question next from Montreal. With the resurgence of vinyl and bands like the Foo Fighters still recording on 2-inch, do you see any chance of analog studios and analog gear becoming popular again?
I don't think it'll ever be what it was. I think, look, I love the analog sound, and I'm glad that it's alive and well. But I think there's something that's so easy about digital, and I like not hearing tape hiss. I like actually not aligning tape machines or aligning Dolbys or any of that. I do wish people had a better understanding of gain structure, which you learn when you learn how to align a tape machine and work with analog. I think it'll hang in some level, but I don't foresee it's ever coming back. I mean, where are you going to put that stuff? First of all, in people's basements, analog gear takes up a lot of room, and it generates a lot of heat, and it requires maintenance. And I don't know any really good maintenance guys who are under the age of 50. So I don't know.
It's hard to find pinch rollers anymore. They've all broken down and turned into sludge. So
yeah. So, I certainly would not stand in the way, but I think it's never going to be what it was.
Since you spent your whole career listening so acutely, and this is a weird question, but can you that analog warmth thing that I think people look for in and I'm not even sure if warmth is the right in the record sound and what they grew up with, is there anything? Well, how would you describe what you're looking for a really great sounding signal? What does it have to have? Is it just accurate to the instrument, or is there some special sauce on top of it?
Yeah. I think a lot of it's about accuracy, but there's something about the sound of whatever it is that you don't find irritating over a long period of time. And that could be different things for different circumstances.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's
you
something
like-
we've certainly talked about even with Zoom. The fact that we have decent audio on here from everybody, that we can talk for hours and not get exhausted. And it's that
Yeah, it's
not
there's
irritating.
something, yeah, irritating about the sound. Like, it makes me want to hang up, which is 90% of the time on Zoom. And I'm like a crazy person when I hear bad Zoom. I mean, my husband's a big fan of Rachel Maddow, and every time she has some guest on who's sitting in their living room using their computer microphone, I start screaming at the television. I'm like, what's wrong with you people? You're on national TV, but they don't have somebody who could advance the sound for this person. Like, you guys are doing it, and this is just sort of a,
it's a daily Zoom webinar.
Yeah, but you do a mic check. God bless you all. I think that's fantastic. Even AES, I was telling Jeff the other day, some of the AES seminars that I watched. It's like, these are audio guys, and you don't have a decent mic? Really?
The physician's son thing or something like
Really?
that.
The Windows 10 notification on national television is what drives me nuts.
There you go.
Yeah, it's, there's a lot of bad audio out there. And to quote my boss, it's a low bar to clear.
Yeah, it's the
So,
I can hear you, it's done, move on.
Yeah,
Which is,
and
that's not
the
very-
other fascinating thing, whether it's we're doing TV or theater or whatever, it's amazing how many people will want to weigh in like they know about audio, but they don't weigh into the lighting designer. They don't tell him he's overlit, or could he move his lights. No offense if there's any lighting guys on here.
You're
but
getting
yeah.
a ton of nods from the panel on this little rant. We all
Yeah.
resonate with this.
Yeah, can't tell you how many times it's like, well, do you have to hang that many boxes? Or could you move the PA just a little bit to the right? And it's kind of like, well, do you want the audience to hear or don't you want the audience to hear? It's like, does she have to wear a headset mic? It's like, well, if you want them to laugh at her jokes, she needs to have a mic. It's endless. It's
Yeah.
just endless.
Jeffrey Powers.
You
has
want
his
to talk
hand up.
about
Oh, go
what
ahead.
you had to do with the debates with the PA?
Oh, the debates, the magical debates.
Yeah, that must be weird with all those people running around and so much on the line. I would imagine the pressure there is pretty intense.
There's a lot of pressure there. We do a lot of pressure gigs. Live is pressure. Having never thought I would end up in live, I have such respect for people in live with the pressure and the adverse circumstances that they have to work under, like, every day. But our big challenge, well, a couple of challenges with Charleston. So the executive producer didn't want to see the PA. She didn't understand why we had to have a PA, why we couldn't do under-seat speakers for everybody, which is just not what we do. We don't find that that's really effective. So we, as you can see here, we spent a lot of time finding the smallest PA we have. Those are Kivas hanging there, and we hung them as far outside as we could so that they would not be, in the main shot. We had them socked with this beautiful white sock so that it would blend in. We had it custom made so that it matched the color of the trim there in the venue. And even still, there was a lot of pushback about, how that was ruining the shot. Now, if you've ever watched a debate, 90% of the time, what are we looking at? We're looking at
the
people's
person
heads.
who's speaking, not the
Yeah.
room.
So there was a lot of battles over that PA, and then we got into additional battles because that particular venue, they have custom drapes that are the colors of the walls that they bring out for anything other than when the symphony is playing there, because it's just such a splashy space. And for a dialogue, for a debate, splash is your enemy. So we had a big fight about pulling the drapes out because that was also going to ruin the shot and impact the lighting. The lighting person, again, here's my beef with lighting, had hundreds of these little lights. They were doing an uplight on the wall in all of those, the boxes around the side. And if we pulled the drapes out, that was going to, impact their look. So that was a partial win. We got to pull some of the drapes, but not all of the drapes.
Jeffrey has had his hand up so long his blood is drained, and then
I didn't know
Francis
if that
go
was
next.
maybe just his
No, it's
his
a
picture
office
or what?
hours convention. It means that Jeffrey has a question or a point to make that he'd like to
Okay.
have.
And I'm
Jeffrey,
saying hi
please.
too. So
Hi.
thank you for being on. This is awesome. Lots of years in the production business. There is there, and I ask this to a lot of the people coming on. Is there anything that you've done, like a tip or a trick or something like that, that becomes like that is something that's Ellen's developed, and something that like maybe we can something that we could hear on an album or anything like that, so you kind of get the idea of, okay, that's how that works. I hope I said that right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're looking for some little special trick.
Little
that you did
along
that
knowledge.
changed. Yeah, that changed the music going down the road from there.
Well, I did a series back when I was doing remastering for Universal called the Complete Motown Singles, where we basically went back and took every single ever released on the Motown label, transferred all of it high res from the original sources, and worked on that. That was many years of my life. But I came to really love TC Electronics, the finalizer. And there's a setting on there, a little button push that just, I forget what it's called now. I haven't used it in so many years. Is it enhance or something? But anyway, there's one setting on there, and it was just like, I use that for every single one of those Motown records. It's just something about it, just takes the vocal, just puts it a little bit out there. It's not just EQ, it's not just a spatial thing, but something about it sort of brought all those vocals for me a little bit out in front, because a lot of that stuff was only 3-track anyway, and it's difficult. You didn't often have just a vocal track, or it was deteriorated or whatever. But anyway, that always gave vocals a little pop for me, and I know when I've mentioned that to people, they're like, oh that finalizer, that's terrible, or whatever. There's a lot of bad. It gets a bad rap, but I thought, oh, that really suited all the mixes that I was getting, or the tapes from that time. It really made a difference.
So I know we all want to talk about the tech and stuff like that. For a moment, though, top 2 or 3 people who walked into the room. I mean, you've had this chance to be behind the scenes with so many fabulous artists. Were there two or 3 times where somebody walked in and you just went, "That's the magic. That's different. This cat or this woman is just working at a different level"?
Well, that Joe Cocker moment I mentioned was definitely up there. Something recently with Keith Urban, I just thought, well, he just, here's a really talented guy and easygoing, comes out and does his thing. I'm constantly amazed at people, like, say we talk about Superstar, and you have John Legend or Sarah Bareilles, and they come out and they do their thing, and then when you go back to the catering tent, they're standing at the end of the line, and they won't let anybody, they don't want to cut, and they're just nice guys. Trying to think who else.
Well, I don't want to turn it into a popularity contest, and we still got
Yeah,
seven
I think-
questions ahead of us.
Yeah, let's go to the questions.
Yeah, here.
That's tough to pick people out because there's magic moments all the time that happen.
Oh, that's
So,
nice. Well,
yeah.
good.
I mean, there's not so nice. But.
Yeah, there's the other. Well, we can all imagine that, but those are all in the tabloids. Everybody can read up on those.
Yes.
So it's nicer to hear the stories where they just turn out to be good people as well as supremely talented. Matt Cooley of Montreal, Quebec says, with this resurgence of vinyl in bands like the Foo Fighters, did I ask that before?
Yes,
I
you
did
did.
ask that before. I did not doing my job. Sorry. We're moving on to Roscoe Jones' question. Will you expand on the relationships with below the line people that you rely on? What's the biggest failure you never saw coming?
I'm not sure I follow.
Well, they're kind of two separate questions. But so, what are the people? I'm sure you have a group of people that you rely on. I mean, you go back to the same production company over and over. How did you come up with them? How did you meet them? How did this relationship develop? Because you're obviously not successful just on your own. There's a whole group that you control.
There is, right. There's two primary rental companies that we deal with, depending on what the project is, that we have contacts there who really know the kinds of things we like and can source them for us. We do have a whole pool of freelancers that we use for various projects, and some are more geared for one project, one type of work than another. But a lot of those relationships had just sort of built up over time, and it evolves because we do get a bad apple now and again, that people that we've relied on. I think the thing that I've most had to police with personnel that we've hired is social media. You'd be surprised how much people think that they can just take a picture of or talk about on social media, and a lot of times the work that we come in to do, sometimes there's aspects of it that the client doesn't want out there, or they don't want it out there in advance, whether it's doing the Tonys and they don't want pictures of the set out before the broadcast, or we do a lot of work for Barclays, and we try and help them maintain certain loudness levels for concerts to help protect people. But they don't necessarily want everybody knowing that these things are going on behind the scenes. And there is a propensity amongst the younger generation, because I guess I'm not the younger generation anymore. They want to put everything on social media, and we find ourselves now having to tell people, hey, you know what, nothing, because I don't want to have to police what they can and cannot. So it's like, if you're working for us, you're not posting anything.
Okay, we still have a lot of questions to get through.
Can I just follow that up though, Bill?
Oh, sure,
And doing all this planning, you're in control. So you're saying we have enough generators, we have enough everything to cover. So what's the biggest thing that's happened that you've had to deal with on a live event? I would say specifically.
We've seen power go out, but generally speaking, there's backup generators. You always need extra wireless because wireless always goes down. I've seen shows come to a stop because the Digico crashed and they got to reboot it. It's one of the reasons I'm not a big fan of Digico. That CL is rock solid all the time. But all that's just, it's kind of in a day's work. You're just, you're always prepared for some sort of failure. So two of everything.
Okay. Andrew Lipnick of San Francisco is in next with For Jesus Christ Superstar. Did the truck receive submixes from the A1s?
Well, the A1s were in the truck. So let me explain. So there were two A1s in the truck responsible for the mix that went to air. There were two A1s at front of house solely responsible for what was being played in the house for the audience. And then I was also in the house, and my submix went to the truck for the chorus was a submix. So other than that, you know, the monitor guys, their thing was totally contained to feeding in-ears and wedges and all that kind of stuff. Front of house, those two mixers were not providing anything to the A1s in the truck.
Got it.
And they divided up their labor. One was really handling all the vocal mics, and the other was handling all the instrument mics.
Great. Mickey has something on this. Mickey, do you want to pop in?
Yeah, just a question. Like when you're just mixing the submix, are you monitoring the full broadcast mix or just your tracks?
No, the full broadcast mix. Yeah, but I have the ability, obviously, to go in and out, and you know, if I need to check stuff without disturbing what goes to air.
Jason here in the panel wants to get technical as well. I know recording isolation tracks for a band is ideal, but do you feel something's lost when every track is recorded separately instead of all together and all at once?
Yes. That's a very simple yes.
That's a definitive.
I think there's something to be said always for people in a room reacting to each other, whether they're playing music or just having a conversation like this, brainstorming, that kind of thing. I'm a big fan of human interaction.
And A. Mitchell now comes in and asks a much better version of what I was kind of dancing around earlier. Is there anyone you've worked with who you really have enjoyed watching their meteoric rise through the industry? I knew them when they didn't have this kind of success and now. And how do you feel the motion through the audio music industry in terms of career paths has evolved since your experiences early on and now?
Okay, well, I don't have any firsthand experience with this artist, but I've actually loved seeing Jennifer Nettles rise from Sugarland, who I saw at some tiny little theater in South Orange, New Jersey, when she was the opening act for Fonda Shepherd, of all people. So, Sugarland was nothing, and now they're like, they're out there, and I think they're amazing.
Her voice just astounds me every time I hear it.
Yeah, she's wonderful. Now, and what was part two?
Part two is that how do you feel the motion through the audio music industry in terms of career paths has evolved since your experiences early on and now? You have people coming less out of the formal thing, I think, and more of the Billie Eilish type of, they start in their bedroom and they're coming through. Do you think seeing that, are there differences? How do you just feel about the path that artists are taking?
All right, so we're talking about the artists, not about audio people coming up through the ranks.
Well, I don't know. It could be in terms of audio people. Are people coming from the same experiences? I mean, when you were starting, was it people out of the audio schools and formal training, or do you get people through this system who do well, who are just self-taught?
Well, when I started out, it was a little of both. I mean, recording schools, were kind of just starting to take off. Now they're like a dime a dozen. And some are wonderful and some, I don't know. But I think the path that people take, I don't even know what the path is that people can take anymore, because there's no studios where you can go and learn and get experience and make contacts and sort of wind your way through wherever your career is going to take you. So I don't know, and I get asked a lot, like, what advice do I have for young people? I don't know. I don't know how you break in anymore. And in live, what I'm starting, live has sort of been okay up to now, because there's still broadcast studios and live events and all that kind of stuff. So there is still somewhat of a mentoring that happens there. But since now with COVID and all this stuff, and everything's now moving to remote, and they're finding ways to put on, the Academy Awards without having anybody in the theater. The director's at home, and this guy's, all these people working out of their houses. So now I don't know how broadcast is going to continue on. Like how do you come out of school, broadcasting school, and and train or mentor with anybody. Because everybody's in their basement. Some guys in Idaho, and the other guys in New Hampshire, and so I'm worried because I see now the demise of that aspect of tech life. It's like how do people break into that? I don't know.
Jeff, just jump in.
So you've had your career, you've talked about being in the studio business, to the mastering studio, into live sound, and you've been able to make those transitions. So what is it about your character or your skill set or your education or just your stubbornness that has allowed you to have a long career?
I think a lot of it is having a good foundation. I mean, Fredonia, I thought was a wonderful program. I'm also a classically trained musician, so especially in the early part of my career when I was doing music, it was like I understood music, I understood musicians, I could relate to how they wanted to work. I mean, the whole reason I got that job at Sony was because my friend called me up and said, we need people who can read a score. I was like, yeah, I can do that. So I think you have to be paying attention all the time and try and see what's coming. You have to be willing to change. Don't be a pain in the ass. Be willing to try, to try new things. I mean, like I said, I never thought that this is what I would be doing at this point in my life. When I started, I thought, well, I'm going to follow in Bob Clearmountain's footsteps. Well, kudos to Bob, but I've been very happy with how my career has evolved, but I didn't necessarily see the next thing coming. So I think you just have to be, just willing to roll with the punches.
Robert Pearson has a very practical question out of McHenry, Illinois. What are your favorite studio monitor speakers?
Let's see. I love the ATCs. I love what else? I mean, Genelecs you need to have Genelecs because everybody has Genelecs. I wouldn't say they're my favorite, but they're a good benchmark. There's the KRKs are also good. The Neumanns, I have the little Neumann Blues, not Neumann Blues, the little Neumann bookshelf ones in my little rig at home. So there's a lot of stuff out there.
Okay. Continuing on, Michael J., New York City. Hi, you mentioned Atlantic Studios. You ever worked with Tom Dowd? And if so, what was that experience like?
Sadly, I did not work with Tom. He had sort of moved on by time I got there. So I heard, stories about him, but no, I had no firsthand experience with Tom.
And since we're in that zone, you got a Mark Harder says, hi, Ellen. Mark Harder from the Hit Factory days, 1989, 1991.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
So I guess we're moving on. Congratulations on all of your success. It's great to hear about all that you're doing. Now, that was his message for you, I guess. So I made a mistake. I didn't realize that some of these were just friends wanting to touch base with you.
Oh, well, what other friends are out there creeping me on Zoom?
The thing about office hours is you never know who's in the audience. There's a lot of people out there, and every day we get a new group. TJ Asher says, what mic are you speaking into today? What did you choose to use from home for the office hours appearance?
Today, it's a Blue Yeti. It's actually a black Blue Yeti, but it is the Blue Yeti, which we're very, very fond of. I didn't know they came in black, but they do.
Yeah. How can it be a Blue Yeti if it's black? That doesn't make any sense. I'm confused.
I know, but I'm telling you.
Okay, I think...
Bill, you skipped past my question.
Oh, did I?
Uh-oh.
Oh, my gosh. Uh-oh.
Another Jeff question.
I just said I asked for advice for young people entering the industry. Formal education, internships, training, should they invest in gear? We kind of went through a little of this before, but... What do you think
I'm
about
sure the
formal
young people,
education?
particularly
think-
here, would love to hear.
Yeah, I think formal education, no doubt. If you can find internships, whether it's a corporate, a corporate broadcast or a studio, if you can find a studio with a live touring sound company, I think there's a lot to be said for interning. They're going to beat you up a little bit and make you do grunt work, but I think it really allows you to see how an operation works and decide maybe a touring company isn't what I want to do, or maybe a production company is, or maybe something in broadcast, a TV show or specials, whatever it is. I think you should try a bunch of different things, because first of all, it's all changing, and a lot of it, in some ways, starts to meld a little bit together. But I think you have to also have an understanding of a lot of different aspects of things now, because we're not an island anymore, unless you somehow manage to mix records in your basement and have a constant flow of artists coming to you. I think there's a lot of places where audio is needed, and they relate to other things and they lead to other things. So
I was so impressed with your answer when you said you got your foot in the door, that little first wedge, because you could read a score. That's not something that most people sitting at home in their bedroom would take on as a skill. And what was your instrument as a classical musician?
I played piano and flute, actually.
So you had been in front of written music for most of your life, and that skill was one of the keys.
Yes.
Am I correct?
Yes. For me, and it got me that opportunity. Yes. And, again, I was fortunate because a place like Sony or Universal, these were big, or even Atlantic, these are big studios affiliated with big record companies. So you get to meet a lot of people. And I think that's how really I found most of my jobs, is through somebody I knew, somebody I met in some prior life. It's the connection aspect of it can't be overstated.
Absolutely. So. Did you ever work with Ahmed Erdogan directly from Atlantic? That was...
Ahmed, yeah.
You close your eyes and took a deep breath.
Yeah, Ahmed was a character.
One of the legends.
He would pop in totally unannounced at the studio, and everybody dropped what they were doing if he wanted to get in and do something. Yeah. Which is good and bad, depending on what you were in the middle of. So,
Schy has a question, and then Jeff can take us home through the rest of it.
I know it's a context thing. My question is: at times you are a craftsman, at times you are an artist. What often we make our living as craftsmen, but I'm sure there's, as was been discussed, there's an artist within you. How do you? What do those two words mean to you in relationship to making a living versus feeding your soul? Sorry.
This is not an easy crowd.
Throw out an easy question in the last 20 seconds.
We tend to dive deep occasionally.
Look, I think part, you talk about survival skills. I think part of it for me has always been trying to find some upside or something to like or be focused on the project. I mean, I know, when I've worked on like heavy metal projects and people are like, how can you listen to that over and over and over and over again? It's like, well, because you're taking it apart and you're listening to it. It's like, maybe I don't particularly like that style, but it's like, oh, maybe that drumming is like really excellent, and you focus in on that. Or you're working some gig that's hideously long hours or whatever, but you think, hey, here I am with I'm with Joe Cocker, I'm with Keith Urban, or I'm with Yo-Yo Ma. It's like, so all of that for me is kind of a rush. It's
Oh, you said Yo-Yo Ma. You worked with Yo-Yo.
Oh, I did work with Yo-Yo.
Oh,
Lovely guy. we were actually trapped in a blizzard in Philadelphia. My husband reminded me of that the other day when we had the big snowstorm here in New York.
I remember that too, Alan.
Yeah. Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I was
Were you
there.
on that one? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Of all the studios in all the world and the blizzard, you walked into mine. There you go.
Yep. So you take those moments and you tuck them away, you put them in your little vault, and you try to remember them even as Alzheimer's sets in. But yeah, I think.
Amazingly, I looked at the clock and it's 9 o'clock. We've made the top of the hour. This has been fabulous. Thank you so much for being here to tell us all these stories and to give us a look inside this part of the someplace we never would have gotten to. So
Well, thank you. I think it's great. I appreciate you having me. I think what you guys are doing here, I'm going to have to tune in periodically, because I think what you're doing here is really important, because this is the thing, and I'll keep it short and end on this note, that is missing, I think, for all of us, even pre-pandemic, is as facilities close and our world becomes a bigger, more divided place, to be able to just ask these random questions like, what mic did you use for that? Or how did you set up your Dugan? Or whatever all these questions are you guys are asking each other, to have the ability to ask somebody. I think that's really, it's crucial.
I think we all felt from day one when COVID locked everything down that we were going to be really upset because we had no more of this kind of interaction in our industries or in our personal lives. A lot of it was cut off when we were stuck at home. And this is, for many of us, turned out to be a real shelter through the storm of this. So you are welcome back anytime. Come in, join the panel, watch, whatever you feel like doing. We would love to have you here as much or as often as you want to be here.
Great. Well, thank you. And thank you, Jeff. And Alex. I think Alex is gone, but thank you all for having me.
Yeah, Alex snuck out a little earlier. And Brian Anderson, I just realized I stole your question for the last one, so credit to you. That was a nice, great final question. Thank you all.
Great.
We will see you all. Oh, I guess are we going to the after show, or is Alex not here to launch it, or who knows?
There's an after party?
Well, there usually is. Almost every day there is, those who wish, we close off the YouTube stream, we shut everything down, and we move over to a secondary meeting afterwards. And I don't know, look at your email incoming from however you got communications from this. And if there's a link that shows up here, then you are welcome. And in fact, we'd love to have you join if it turns out we're doing it today. It's a lot less formal.
Okay, I would actually love to, except I do have another presentation coming up, so I have to go get ready for that one.
Well, then come another day and stay after.
I will come another day and stay longer. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Cool. All right.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody, for watching Office Hours today. We'll be here tomorrow, same time, starting way too early and going until we run out of stuff to talk about. We'll see you all tomorrow.
Thanks, Alan.
Thank you, Jeff. Take care.